My name is Chaitanya. I'm the product manager for Oracle Apex, and I work for Joel, and I'm part of the Apex product development team. I'm based out of Hyderabad, India. And today I'm very happy to introduce and welcome Daniel from Germany. Daniel is going to talk to us about Know Your Browser Dev Tools. Daniel is a freelance Oracle Apex developer and consultant. Daniel is an Oracle ace. Before I hand it over to Daniel, I would like to give a quick reminder that 10 minutes before the session ends, we will open the Q&A session. So please feel free to put the questions in the Q&A chat. And feedback for the session will be open 10 minutes before the session ends and 10 minutes after the session ends. So make sure you submit your feedback and grab the goodies. Thank you so much. Over to Daniel.
Thanks for the introduction, and thanks for having me, and thanks all the people running and managing right now. And a special thanks, of course, to Martin, Trent, and Adrian for having the idea of this whole online conference. I like it a lot. For the next hour, we are talking about browser development tools. Another short introduction to myself. I'm Daniel Hochleitner from Germany. I'm doing Apex over 10 years now. I'm getting old. Of course, I do the same with Oracle itself. Started with Oracle Forms, and half a year later, I was already in doing Apex. I'm a freelance developer and consultant since 2016, and I do a lot of open source work on GitHub. These are the two community projects I'm involved. First of all, Apex World, and the second is Apex Theme Stars. And on Apex World, you will find some open source work of me too. So back to the topic. The agenda for today is, first of all, some general things about browser development tools, how to manage your client-side source code, so JavaScript and CSS, for example. Monitor the network activity and performance, so the network activity between the client and the server side. How to have a look and manage client-side storage, so cookies, local storage, session storage, for example. And the last would be to run some audits and tests. All major browsers have some auditing tools built in. So this would be the last part, and if times allows, I'm just showing how to remotely debug mobile devices, iOS or Android devices, for example. So let's get started. Yeah, Apex loves the web since 1999. This is a long time. And yeah, let's take a seat in our time machine and have a look at some pages which was around at this time. This is the eBay page in 1999. Looks very polished, right? Yahoo. I think nowadays Yahoo is pretty dead. Does someone use it? I don't know. Past in the days, it was huge. Google was still beta. So yeah. The Apple homepage, nice iMac. Microsoft.com. If you remember AOL for your internet connection back in the days. The Netscape communicator. So beside Internet Explorer, it was the first real browser. And this is still true today. Internet Explorer sucks. And what I read today on Twitter is that Apex 21 is deprecating Internet Explorer support. Yay! So, and this also happened 1999. These three guys invented Apex, HTMLDB. And last year, I think it was on the Apex Alpe Adria conference, Mike Hitchwer shared this slide, and this is the source code used in Apex. So you see that JavaScript and CSS is more involved than the SQL and PL SQL part. It's not the whole truth. I think the whole JavaScript comes from the used libraries, jQuery, for example. If you do it exact, you have to count in the whole SQL and PL SQL logic from the database too, and maybe then PL SQL will be more. I don't know. But this slide shows that we should look at JavaScript and CSS too. And what my work told me the last years at customer side or at conferences, that most of the people developing Apex apps has some database-centric background. So most of the people don't know how to use browser development tools and how to use the same features which are known to them in SQL or PL SQL, for example, debugging, setting breakpoints and stuff like that. And it would be nice to have that knowledge to use it on the client side too. And on the right side, you will see the statistics of Stack Overflow in 2019. And it shows that JavaScript, HTML, SQL are the top languages under the programming languages. So basically, this is all Apex uses today, right? So let's get the party started. Didn't know about that. There exists a self cross-site scripting attack. So you copy some malicious code from some page and hack yourself. I find it funny. So when I customer side, client side debugging most of the times look like this. So some kind of browser alert telling me the value of an item, for example. This is not so nice, right? This is a bit better, but still not debugging, it's logging. So console log and value of an item. But we can do better, right? So let's get started. And what are browser dev tools for and what can they do? Basically, it's a set of developer tools built into any major browser. They are a bit different. The Firefox tools are a bit different to the Chrome tools and Safari and Internet Explorer too. But most of the time, I use Chromium-based browsers. I like the dev tools there most. But it's on your own, your decision, what browser dev tools you like best. But the feature set is pretty similar between them. So the main features, first of all, is to show you the HTML of a page and manipulate that HTML and the DOM tree behind it. Execute JavaScript code and functions. Apply some CSS rules, so for styling your application. Client-side debugging and logging to get some output. Analyze the network activity between browser and server side. And of course, the performance. And test different screen sizes or device classes. So you want to see your desktop application, how it behaves on a mobile device, for example, or how responsive the whole application is. And to be honest, Apex does a really good job there for looking nice on different screen sizes. So these are some shortcuts to open the browser dev tools, the inspector, the console, and the source code section of it. The same for Firefox, but it's pretty similar. And if you have a notebook, a new MacBook, for example, and have that shiny thing called Touch Bar, and this is the only thing I use it for, is to have some dedicated buttons, shortcut buttons to open it in the browser. So these are the different sections of the browser development tools. They are basically called panels. Sort of the first panel would be the elements panel. This is there you see the whole HTML and DOM tree, can inspect some some HTML elements, apply some styling, CSS rules to it. The second part would be the JavaScript console. There you can put in some logging, JavaScript function, execute commands. You have some nice autocomplete in there for JavaScript functions. After that, you will see the sources panel. This is basically a built-in browser IDE for JavaScript and CSS. It's pretty nice. The next would be the network panel to see the whole network traffic between browser and server side. Next is the performance panel to measure performance, client-side performance, runtime statistics of JavaScript functions, for example. Same for memory, where you get memory statistics of your page. Next would be the application panel. I think they renamed it a couple of years ago. I think first it was called storage. I don't know. But basically you will see some information about your client-side storage, like cookies, local storage, IndexedDB. And of course, and I think that's the reason why it's called application now, you see some information for progressive web apps, for example. Next is the security panel, where you see some security related things like, is your connection secure? Is it HTTPS protected? And the last thing would be the audits panel to perform some audits. Is it a good progressive web app or best practices used in your application? How about accessibility, search engine optimization, and you can even throttle network traffic, which means you simulate some slower network, like a slow 3G network on your phone. So the first thing is the command menu. If you're familiar with Visual Studio Code, for example, it's pretty much the same. So it's a shortcut, Control-Shift-P, and you will get some command menu where you can just type in and execute commands, open panels and stuff like that. If you don't like to use your mouse, this is a nice way to jump between the different sections of the browser development tools. And the first big topic today would be how to manage your source code with the built-in tools. So the first thing is the elements panel. As I mentioned before, this is basically to see the HTML and the DOM tree, inspect each HTML element, change it, edit the whole HTML structure, edit attributes and classes of different tree elements. And on the right thing, you will see the CSS rules applied to each element, for example, which you select on the left side. A short introduction to HTML and the DOM tree. On the left, you will see basically the HTML of some page. And on the right side, this is the DOM tree of it. It's a tree structure with nodes interpreting it. And now you can interact with both. If you change the DOM tree, also the HTML get changed and vice versa. So this is basically the elements panel. On the left side, as mentioned, the HTML structure, and on the right side, the styling CSS information to it. You can edit directly as HTML. You can change styling information. Now I'm changing the background color of an input field. It's the input field P2 ename. So this is the item name in Apex. And now it has a background color of light blue, for example. It's a very basic example. Next would be the JavaScript console, where you can console output some information. Like if you're a database guy, like DBMS output. Execute JavaScript code and functions. You have a code autocomplete. So if you type in some code, you will get autocomplete informations to it. You can have live expressions. I show it in a short demo. It's a nice way to handle some outputting to the console. You can clear and persist output between pages. So if you change the page, normally the output is cleared in the console, but you can manage to persist it. And this is the only panel which can be opened as a dedicated panel next to each other. So here you will see I will get an item variable with the Apex item function. And then you will have some autocomplete functionality to it. These are the live expressions. So in this example, my live expression is getting the value of an item. And as I type in, it gets output on the console. And if you enable Apex debug mode, you will also get the complete output of the dynamic actions in the browser console, which is pretty, I think since 1991, it's enough to be logged in as a developer and all the dynamic actions get outputted without debug mode. Next thing of the source code section is the sources panel. It's basically, as mentioned before, a built-in browser IDE. You can see all the loaded files from the page, so all the JavaScript and CSS files which are present on your page. You can beautify and pretty print minified code, for example. If you don't familiar with minified code, minifying JavaScript code, for example, makes the whole code smaller, removes white space, but it does more. It optimizes your code. It renames variables to shorter variable names, for example. And at least it's, if you use it on your local IDE, for example, it's some compiling. You will see errors in there before integrating it in Apex. So it's a nice way to handle errors before using it in your application. And it saves bandwidth. It's a much smaller size of the file. So the client browser doesn't have to download that much code. Yeah, you can debug JavaScript code in there and set in breakpoints. You can even edit local source files and folders, and this functionality is called overrides, local overrides. It's a nice way to develop locally on your machine with remote files. So you enable local overrides by selecting an empty folder on your machine, and then all source code which you changed in the sources panel would automatically be saved in that empty folder. And from this moment on, the local file is used instead of the remote file on the server. So you can develop on that file, and after that, if you're finished, you upload it, for example, to the static application files of your Apex application. A little bit like Apex Nitro, but built in your browser. So there you see the sources panel. You see on the left side the whole folder structure from all loaded files on that page. There are a lot of libraries, for example, loaded, jQuery is loaded on an Apex page. The Apex files itself, which are needed, are loaded. And in this example, I included an app.js file, which is hosted in the static application files of my application. I can change it in there, setting breakpoints. Now I'm selecting, for example, a native Apex file, which is shipped with Apex from, I think, theme 42. So it's the JavaScript file of the universal theme. In standard mode, it is minified right now. And if you click that little brackets button on the left, down on the left, you can beautify the whole code. So it's more human readable. And after that, you can set easily breakpoints, for example. And if the function gets executed, it stops on that breakpoint, and you can skip through your code, see what local variables has on values, for example. This is the local override section, and the best thing is to just show it. So I hope everyone sees my browser. So the first thing was opening it and the elements panel. And on the left corner here, you will see toggle device toolbar. So you can mimic some other devices, for example, in this case, an iPhone X. And it does more than just putting the screen size to the correct dimensions of that phone. It also tells the server side the correct user agent. So that right now the server recognizes it as a real iPhone without touch integration, of course. So you have some device classes. If that's not enough, you can edit the device classes and add more, for example. What's pretty interesting is in here is the responsive mode. So you can have some responsiveness in there and see how your application behaves. That's pretty nice. You have some screenshot functionality in there. For example, if I want some screenshots for marketing purposes of an iPhone screen, I choose the iPhone size, click capture screenshot, save it, open it, and you have a screenshot in iPhone size of your application. You can even capture a full screenshot. That's a bad example. So if you have more content on the page like this, a full screenshot will capture the full size of the page. So let's have a look at this screenshot. It's a bit longer, right? So coming back to source code and the elements panel, you can always inspect an element directly within the page, and it jumps right in there to the correct node. Now you can apply some styling, for example, background color, as mentioned before. That's in there. You can change classes, delete whole nodes, delete element, for example, and now it's gone. Form amp. On this page, I included some JavaScript functionality. So coming back to live expressions, taking the item ID, and here you have your live expressions, and my live expressions is as shown in the screenshots before, apex item of this item dot get value, so getting the value of that item. And as I type in here, we'll get it locked to the console. It's a nice way to lock stuff. If you do it the jQuery way, for example, you could do it, but it's more code involved. So which does basically the same. It's not really the same, but similar to the output from before. Yeah, and you can basically execute every JavaScript function here with autocomplete functionality. So for example, I'm now calling the Apex namespace and what's in there. Apex message, for example. Show page success. Yeah, this shows success message, right? If you want to get more information about all the included JavaScript functionality of Apex, it's good to know the JavaScript RPE reference of Apex, where you get some documentation to all kind of functionality built in this. Pretty important. So coming back to the application and to the sources panel. So the built-in JavaScript IDE. So load that page. Here you will see I included an app.js file, which does nothing more than marking changed text items. I included it here on the static files and uploaded it, where you get the reference, and you can use this reference on page level, for example, and include it here on the file URLs. I included it application-wide, so this file is loaded on every page. I always would recommend to do it file-based, because you can first of all reuse your code. I see a lot of functionality of JavaScript functions at customers, for example, here at page load, JavaScript functions defined here, or function global variable declaration. The problem is you need that functionality on one page. Several weeks later, months later, you need it on a second page. So what does many people do? Just copying over. But now you have to change some part of that code. So you have to change it basically everywhere you use that code. And if you do it file-based and have that code in one file, you only have to change that one thing instead of multiple times. So this code does basically this. These two items are changed. Now I'm enabling local overrides. So you select a local folder, overrides. It must be an empty folder, otherwise it doesn't function well. So now the browser asks you if it's okay to access that local folder. Yeah, of course. And from this time on, I can change code here. So let's console log changed item. I save it. Now always this happens, but this is pretty normal. You just have to reload the page one time. And now when we execute that function, we should see some console output in our console. Let's look at the console, and voila, we have outputted that. So instead of the file coming from the server, the local file is used. So just have a look at my file system. So going to overrides, we have some stuff in here. So they mimic the whole path of the server side. Let's go back and open this in my favorite editor. So now here in Visual Studio Code, I have my app.js. I even can change it here. Save it, reload the page, do the same. Now the label, the console log label here is changed. That's pretty nice though. So you can completely develop locally. And if you're finished with your work, you just upload the app.js file in this example back to your, in this kind, static application files. And you're done. That's pretty nice. So now I'm disabling this again. Just showing you, I disabled the local overrides. Now the file is coming from the server again. So now there shouldn't be any console output. And yeah, no console output because the code I added isn't there on the server side. So the next thing would be to open, for example, the universal theme file. Now it's minified. And if you click the pretty print button down on the left, it got beautified. And now it's more human readable. Just have a look at the different functionality. You have, of course, some context menus with a lot of functionality built in everywhere. So check this out. But this was the whole source code section. So the elements panel, console, and sources is to manage your source code. Now the network panel. Basically, it's to analyze the network activity from client to server. You will see the different requests. You will see the HTML and HTTP headers. You see the response data of your server. You will see the request data, which the client sent it to the server. You get some timing informations and waterfall diagrams. You can even network throttling, enable network throttling to simulate some slow 3G network. You can replay Ajax requests, and you can customize it to your needs. So this is the network panel. On this page load, you will see that are some Ajax calls to www flow Ajax are fired. You will see the header information. You see the request and response data. This is the response from the server. Basically, this was a set value from multiple items. Then we will go to the application panel. There you can manage your whole client-side storage. So cookies, local session storage, IndexedDB, and caches. Most important here would be in an Apex application, I think it would be cookies and local and session storage. You will see the cookies, the cookie name, the cookie value. Same for session storage and local storage. They are pretty much the same. The only thing, local storage persists even if you close the browser window or your browser, and session storage is only valid until the window gets closed. Then it's automatically cleared. And you, of course, you can clear the storage. If you're just debugging your application, it's sometimes good to just clear all the storage and debug it again. So short demo to it, I think. Yeah, 10 minutes left. So first of all, the network panel. I clear it, reload the page. Now you see all the resources which are loaded from the server side. If you click one element, you get the response. In this kind, it was the HTML document itself, so you get HTML back. You have a small preview functionality, but without styling. You see what the browser sent to the server and what the server responded. You see some timing informations in there. So, and jetzt now check out this functionality. I'm just clearing it. And now I'm setting items with a dynamic action. And you will see the items are set correctly, but the waterfall diagram doesn't look so nice. So what has the developer done in a false way? You will see an Ajax call is fired. The client side waits until it finished, and then the second Ajax call got fired. If we inspect some Ajax call, it's always some value, which some item value, which we get back. So just have a look at this page. This is page 3. Oh, the developer has used set value for each item. This is not very nice, and the performance is pretty bad. We can do it in a different way. Just set the page. And now we have one Ajax call, so one round trip between client and browser, which is way nicer and way more performant. And we will see the responses, all item values in one JSON structure. So what's the difference? This time the developer used execute pure SQL code, for example, and set it the item values in one pure SQL block and returned the item names. So this would be a way nicer method to do it. Next, we could debug an Ajax-based file upload, for example. If we choose a file, upload it, you will see all the requests happening. This was JavaScript side, converting the blob. And now Ajax call was fired to upload the file. You see different informations, like the size, the timing informations, and you can even configure it. If you need more informations, you can add columns to there or remove columns if you want to see less information. This plugin also supports chunked file uploads. Just see the difference. Let's configure chunked uploads. And wait, clear the output before, so we see it. Upload the same file, so the file is basically splitted into chunks, and the chunks are uploaded to the server. Now you will see different Ajax requests, and each of them is uploading a piece of the file, right? And you will see it all in here. So next would be the client-side storage. There's also a namespace for it, so an Apex built-in functionality in Apex storage. Just have a look at the documentation. In this demo, I create a demo cookie with that value, set cookie. And now going to application and have a look at cookies. Now we have here a demo cookie. You can even read the value. So this is the value. You can change it in here. Use, changed, get the value. Now we're getting the changed value. Same for session storage and local storage, of course. It's basically a key value store, right? So back to the presentation. The last thing which I show would be the audits panel to perform some audits. So is your application good for mobile or desktop use? Is the performance good? Is it, does it care about progressive web app functionality? Some best practices in this example, these are of course best practices of Google, I think, on Chromium-based browsers. Accessibility testing, search engine optimization, which is not so important for Apex application, I guess, and of course network throttling. This would be the audits panel. So you select the device class you would like to test and run some audits on, and which audit should be run. In this example, just the accessibility tests and no throttling, for example. And Apex does a really nice job in accessibility. So the score is already pretty high out of the box, and this is perfect. You as a developer has to do nothing. These are the best practices. So the last thing, yeah, we have 2 minutes left, would be remote debugging. But first of all, I show you a live audit. Just load the form page, go to the audit section. I want to do a best practice and accessibility test on desktop browsers. Okay, generate report. And now it generated a report for me from this two audits. And you can go through the results. But for a standard page, which is completely low code and you have done nothing custom code, which is a pretty nice result, right? And best practice, yeah, I don't use HTTP2 protocol, for example. Yeah, it's my local host environment and I doesn't need it here. For production environment, it's good to have it in place. You see some information in this example. It throttled even the CPU. And you get some basic information about the client. So, and remote debug. I prepared some video yesterday for it. For more information, just visit that links for iOS and Safari, and for Android and Google Chrome. But basically, this is what happens. So first of all, on an iOS device, you go to your settings application, search Safari, go to straight down to advanced settings. And here it's important to select Web Inspector to on. And after that, you connect your phone with USB to your Mac, open up Safari, go to the develop menu, and now you're seeing your iPhone in there and your page. And now you have the same functionality from your desktop browsers. but debugging live on your mobile device. So you can go through the elements and nodes and HTML structure, live change it in there. It's also changed on the phone. You can remove elements. Oh, by the way, this was an application for my daughter. Everyone asked, how old is he? How old is she? And doctors would like to know the weeks and stuff like that. And at some point it was too difficult, so I built a small application for it. So you see the network tab, you see the same information header and response informations, request informations. You can even execute JavaScript functions in the console. Now I'm inserting an alert function for every element which gets clicked. On the iPhone, I click some elements and yeah, it's working. Pretty nice to debug on an actual device, mobile device. And when you have nothing to do, Chromium-based browsers have some built-in small Dino game, so just Chrome Dino in the URL, and you have fun. Here are some resources which are pretty good, and documentations, visit them. I learned a lot from them. And yeah, I think we are ready for some Q&A.
All right, so a first question from the chat window from the Q&A. How do we keep ourselves up to date with what these browsers are releasing that will impact our Apex applications? For example, Chrome released new same-site policy in Feb 2020, and our client started screaming when they couldn't launch Apex page embedded as an iframe in SAS.
Okay. Yeah, that's always difficult to keep up. On the main level, the framework itself have to keep up with such functionality. But for iframes, you can set the policy in an Apex application. So it's you go to shared components, security attributes, and you can allow iframes or allow from the same site or allow generally. So I hope this helps. But Apex releases 2 times a year. They will update the JavaScript libraries, and at worst case, you have to wait half a year. But in an enterprise environment, I think it's possible to have some requirements on browser level.
Thanks. The next question, is the timing breakdown under page info in the developer the same as the network panel tab?
Sorry, I didn't hear it correct.
Is the timing breakdown under page info in the developer the same as the network panel tab?
Yeah, like a basic one, but it's similar. You see some basic timing informations, that's correct. But I think the built-in browser development tools are more feature-rich and more capable of doing it. But for a short overview of getting some timing informations, the Apex built-in method is pretty okay.
One more question. Someone is asking, would you please show the previous slide?
This one?
Yes, but they might want to take a pic.
I don't know, are the slides shared after the conference?
Yes, that will be, and as well, the recordings will be made available.
Okay.
After the event.